Now, in the world of Cartoon Network original cartoons, none managed to capture the same kind of energy that Ed, Edd and Eddy did. It was a show in an absolute league of its own, and it's one of those where, in all honesty, I feel like you either love it or you hate it. Personally, I love this show. I see it as a golden relic of an era of Cartoon Network that can never be replicated. It had such a weird vibe to it that you just kind of can't look away. Even the weird and gross out moments had their allure in a very charming way. There were so many episodes that would either leave you completely taken back or questioning everything that you had just seen, and not even in a bad way. It never really takes itself too seriously, but with that in mind, don't doubt its ability to tell a compelling story. It absolutely had a very tactful way of weaving an interesting tale through all of the bizarre oddities and hyperbolized characters. For all intents and purposes, it's a show that I think many would agree deserves a rightful spot on the proverbial Mount Rushmore of Cartoon Network cartoons. Perhaps where the show would shine the brightest, though, would be in those episodes that are just so morbid that they leave you completely speechless by the end. Episodes that hit like a ton of bricks and really make you feel for these characters despite them being nothing but lines and colors on a screen. It's almost as if they lure you in with the hilarious gags and oddball characters, then they burn the events of the episode into your brain by portraying some truly obscene events. And that's why today, on our nostalgic walk down memory lane, we're gonna dive into an episode of Ed, Edd and Eddy that perfectly embodies that sentiment. It's an episode that is just chock full of iconic and hilarious moments, but at the same time, in hindsight, it really has me contemplating just how messed up that the story here was. Before we dive into the ways that this episode perfectly walked that tightrope though, I just want to say thank you all so much for clicking on this video, and thank you for your time. I hope that you're having an awesome day, and I hope that life is treating you well. Do me a quick favor and let me know down in the comments what other Cartoon Network shows that you'd like to see me cover on this channel. I've got an awesome video about the Powerpuff Girls coming down the pipeline, and I'm totally curious about what else you guys would like to see. Please do me a solid and sound off down in the comments. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. Other than that, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a like and consider subscribing. Nowadays, the algorithm is super picky and it pretty much needs all of the interaction and engagement for a channel to grow. So commenting, liking, subscribing, sharing the video with your friends, doing that for literally any small YouTuber who doesn't already have millions of eyes on their channel already, is doing us a massive favor. I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say that we appreciate it more than words could say. With that out of the way though, let's get right into it. Today we're diving into an episode that in some ways shocks me with just how conceptually morbid that it is, but even more than that, it genuinely stands out as an iconic and memorable episode of the series. We're talking about none other than A Case of Ed. So as this episode starts out, we see Kevin standing in his house, looking out his window just furious while toilet paper rolls fly past him over and over again. We quickly learn that this is none other than Eddy and Ed taunting him because he's grounded and can't come outside to do anything about it. Now, immediately, I have to acknowledge that this might be the single greatest cold opening to any episode of Ed, Edd and Eddy. The zero context nature of this one, immediately starting with Kevin being teased by the Eds while he's pretty much handcuffed inside, is just so perfect. It's not only hilarious, but it sets it up right from the start so that you just know that Kevin is gonna get his revenge by the end. Right at that moment though, their fun is interrupted by Double D, who walks up with a wagon full of books, saying that the library was having a sale and that he stocked up on all sorts of used books for his collection. As he goes through the stack, he comes across one in particular that piques his interest.
The Encyclopedia of Obscure Diseases? This looks edifying. The lackadaisy cathro disease. Oh, listen to this, Ed. Symptoms include the rationalizing of mundane circumstances, habitual cleanliness, and an abnormal fixation to headwear.
That sounds resembling.
It sounds like sockhead, bonehead.
Taken back by this obscene implication, Double D tries his best to laugh it off, saying that none of that sounds like him at all. However, the more that he reads this book, the further his panic seems to creep in. Meanwhile, Eddie is busy turning his attention back to Kevin, going as far as repeatedly ringing his doorbell over and over again until Kevin answers, just to remind him that he's grounded and isn't supposed to be outside.
Hello, Kevin. Why are you such a sad sack? 'Cause he has been grounded. Oh, pardon me. I should be in show business.
As Eddie and Ed have fun mocking Kevin, Double D continues to panic with his nose buried in this book. When he reads that weakness in the lower extremities is yet another surefire symptom, he's completely sold and convinced that he in fact has lackadaisy cathro disease. He pulls out an ice pack and a thermometer as he turns white as a ghost with deep bags under his eyes, just shaking as if he were nearly at death's door. Naturally, Eddie sees this as the perfect opportunity to mess with Double D, telling him that he doesn't look so good. He grabs the book while Double D continues to escalate.
This is you all over, Double D. It says here there's some tests to see how advanced it is.
Of course, tests. Medical science will provide the answer.
Just like that though, we see the Eds playing doctor's office while Dr. Ed reads the book upside down, saying that he'll be with Double D shortly. Of course, Double D is completely confused by the implication that Ed is even slightly qualified to be a doctor. But of course, Eddie yet again takes this as the perfect opportunity to mess with him more, saying that confusion is yet another symptom of lackadaisy cathro disease. As Double D sits on a stool freaking out, waiting to be seen by Dr. Ed, Eddie gets back to messing with Kevin as all of this is unfolding on his front lawn, which is completely littered with toilet paper. As Eddie just keeps digging his grave deeper and deeper, refusing to put that shovel down, Dr. Ed starts doing some really odd tests on Double D, including tasting his shoes, using an egg beater on his tongue, and listening to it with a can on a string. Ultimately, he comes to the conclusion that Double D's feet are shrinking in size, which Eddie of course points out as yet another symptom, causing Double D to sweat buckets and panic even further about his sudden bout of lackadaisy cathro disease. He tells Eddie that things are progressing severely.
I'm so unwell.
Jeez Louise! Has anybody tried to kick you yet?
No?
Good, cause that's the final symptom. You're in the clear, buddy boy.
Of course, like clockwork, Eddie kicks Double D right in the backside, sending him flying up in the air. Worried even more about his disease and thinking that this is a new symptom, Double D desperately begs Dr. Ed to do anything at all to help him. But sadly, Ed just ignores him, calling for the next patient. At that, Double D grovels at him, expecting the worst.
Tell me the truth, Doctor. How long am I for this world?
Till lunch?
Now this, oh man, this frame right here. Really quick, I just have to point out how much I absolutely love the way that this deep red background really set the theme so abruptly for Double D's world being shattered. Like, this portrays so well that in this exact moment, any hope that this poor kid had to overcome this disease that he thinks he had was just completely crushed and obliterated. Just then, though, Eddie pulls out a piece of paper and a pencil, handing it over to Double D and insisting that he write up his will and leave him something nice. To which Double D just breaks out into even further hysterics and runs away crying, convinced that this is his last day alive. Eddie, of course, breaks out into laughter, thinking that all of this is just side-splitting. Meanwhile, Ed starts crying, sad that Double D is gonna pass away, not remembering that he's the one that gave him that diagnosis in the first place.
Double D ain't really sick, Lummox, remember?
That's some good TV right there.
Now, back to Arcade Threat. Hey, Jughead, over here!
Whoa, ho, ho. I am turning into a werewolf, Eddie.
Now, this... oh man, we're gonna break this down a little more later, but this right here... oh, that's peak. This is peak Ed, Edd, and Eddy comedy if I have ever seen it. Elsewhere in the cul-de-sac, though, we see Double D walking with a wagon full of his things as tears run down his pale face. All of the other kids approach him, asking what's wrong, but Double D just bursts into tears, talking about how thoughtful that they all are. At that, he begins giving them things that he's planned to leave for them.
Double D, are you, like, going somewhere?
Nas. So many things left unsaid.
Really? Like what, Double D?
What's his problem?
At that exact moment, Jimmy notices the kick me sign on Double D's back and decides to give him a swift kick to the behind, making Double D sob even more about his dreaded lackadaisy-cathro disease diagnosis. He sobs and weeps about the end coming when all of a sudden, Naz, feeling bad for him, walks up and shows him that someone put a sign on his back, saying that all of this is probably an elaborate prank. Double D stands there holding the sign as he connects the dots, regaining the color in his face and even turning red in anger. Back at Kevin's house, however, we see him sitting in complete and utter darkness, just so fed up with Eddie and his antics at this point, as now he's built an entire massive brick wall around the house to block any light from coming in and stop Kevin from seeing outside. All of a sudden, though, Double D approaches them angrily, confronting Eddie for the prank that he pulled on him.
This was found on my body. You had me believe I was expiring.
Rage! Ain't that a symptom, Dr. Ed?
I got out early for good behavior.
Honest, I tried to stop him. But Ed insisted we bust your chops. He did.
Ed starts running while Eddie holds on to him for dear life as the two of them lock themselves in Eddie's house. They stand in the living room gloating about how Kevin can't get them, but all of a sudden, Double D comes up from out of nowhere with a spare key for Eddie's house and he drops it on the ground, pretending to misplace it, leaving it right where Kevin can get it.
Kevin's justified pummel disorder. Symptoms are bruising of the eye, followed by a sore rear end and a rapid release of hot air from an inflated ego.
This episode, dude, it's such a versatile one because there's just so much going on as far as the emotions that it invokes. Where a lot of other shows have episodes that focus strictly on the funny angle, the sad angle, the suspenseful angle, or the scary angle, this one took a plethora of different angles, dropped them all in a bag, shook them up aggressively, and just dropped them all on an Ed, Edd and Eddy storyboard. On one hand, we have the heartbreak of watching Double D being convinced that this is the end of the line for him and trying to tie up all of his loose ends with his friends before he crosses over to the other side. Meanwhile, on the other hand, we have the resentment building toward Eddie for being the one that baited him into this position, manipulating his hypochondria. On somehow a third hand though, we also have a lot of joy and hilarity coming from Eddie and watching him simultaneously antagonize Kevin, and that alone leads to even a fourth hand where the anticipation and excitement of waiting for Eddie to get what's coming to him leads to the ultimate payoff. In a sense, if this episode was a delicious meal, Eddie would be the Chinese five spice, covering the flavors of sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and savory. As much as he's an antagonist and pisses us off as viewers, he's also hilarious in a lot of his antics. As funny as those antics are though, we're all left on the edge of our seats waiting for him to get what's coming to him from Kevin. All the while though, we're all left baffled that A, he's able to get away with all of this for so long, and B, the fact that Double D actually bought into any of this. It's admittedly a complex chain of emotions, and it's impressive that a zany show like Ed, Edd n Eddy can pull off something like this, all the while not losing the show's original charm and what made it so good. One huge aspect that really makes this one hit hard is the fact that Double D's panic and hypochondria isn't something that progressively grows more and more crippling. It's straight up immediate 0 to 60 acceleration in less than half a second. Literally, one moment he's standing there happily going through his stack of books, and in the blink of an eye, he's full-blown looking like a ghost and feeling like he's dying. In a bit of an odd sense too, this is kind of boldened by the fact that Eddie's pranks on Kevin got progressively more extreme over time. It starts with him just TPing his house, and over the course of the episode, we see it escalate to him full-blown building a massive brick wall around Kevin's house so he can't even see out his windows anymore. All just to mess with him. Eddie jumps through all of these hoops and does all of this stuff, literally simply in the name of antagonizing Kevin. Meanwhile, Double D is just kind of a layup to him. I think it was probably about the point where I heard the sad desperation in Double D's voice as he begged Dr. Ed to do literally anything to help him, when I realized that what Eddie is doing to him is straight up just for a side laugh. Double D is pushed as far as believing that he's going to perish. He went around the neighborhood in tears saying his final goodbyes. All in the name of Eddie getting a little side laugh on top of already being occupied with laughing at and mocking Kevin. Not to mention the overall brazen nature of Eddie pulling out a piece of paper and a pencil in response to Double D thinking that it's his last day alive. Eddie just immediately pushes Double D to think about who gets all of his stuff when he knows good and well that Double D is absolutely fine. It's purely just to pour some salt on the wound and push him even further into his sadness and desperation. In all reality though, what it did was show us just how much of a cunning little jerk that Eddie is. Like, the fact that he'd do this to one of his best friends just shows how expendable that he views everybody around him. With that in mind though, I guess in a way that kind of does show the fact that the glory and hilarity of this show is rooted in the sense that there's never really any consideration of consequence anywhere. Eddie just kind of acts and doesn't stop to think that Kevin isn't gonna be grounded forever, and that eventually he's gonna get out of that house. He also doesn't stop to consider that what he's telling Double D is absolute lies, and once he realizes that Eddie was just messing with him, he's also gonna want some revenge. Honestly, it's kind of a genius general energy that this show maintains that always sets it up for a satisfying ending, and this episode is a prime example of that. The fact that in the end, Double D ended up just being perfectly set up to allow Kevin to get some revenge for the both of them would prove to be the cherry on top of this episode, serving as just the perfect payoff. We see Double D get his revenge on Eddie without barely even having to lift a finger or put much thought into it. The fact that the show tends to set itself up for a lot of perfect full circle moments at the end of each episode where the guilty parties get their comeuppance would kind of be one of the ultimate factors that would make this show stand out above many others. The writers didn't really have to reach for like random gag endings or cheap cop-outs to tie up loose ends. They had the foresight to take story structure seriously from the get-go, which allowed them the opportunity to play it real loosey-goosey with humor throughout. It's interesting to consider though that the ending and the payoff wasn't even really the high point in this episode. Sure, it was a satisfying payoff at the end, without a doubt, but if I'm being honest, for me there were kind of two high points here. First of all, we have the comedic high point. That would be the moment where Eddie's mocking of Kevin reaches its most extreme point and he drops trow and shows Kevin his butt. This singular frame right here might be the funniest of the entire show, and I love it so much. The second high point for me though would be the emotional high point, where Double D is walking in the alleyway with his little wagon full of stuff and saying goodbye to everybody. The thing about these moments though is that as much as they serve as high points in different ways, they're both examples of the loosey-goosey comedy in the same way. To be very specific, going back to the point where Eddie moons Kevin, as that happens, Ed is in the background saying,
Whoa! I am turning into a werewolf, Eddie!
Now, I know for sure that as a kid, I did not connect the dots on this joke. It went completely over my head. But processing this as an adult, connecting the werewolves to mooning dots, it's really one that's not only side-splitting, but has me realizing where another true hidden gem of this show lies. There's just so many moments where someone says some out-of-pocket stuff, and like, it feels as if it's said almost in a way that isn't meant to give you time to really process it, especially as a kid. But when you look back and listen to what's being said, it's crazy to realize how much of this dialogue is not only hilarious, but also genuinely worth a raise of the eyebrow. Directly going back to the moment where we see the emotional high point of Double D approaching the kids of the cul-de-sac in his medical gown looking like a shell of his former self, we hear Rolf say this.
Ed boy, why does your face sag lower than Nana's inner thighs?
Now, listen, okay, I'm sure I speak for a lot of us when I say that when we were kids, a lot of the stuff that Rolf said kind of went in one ear and out the other. A lot of it seems like nonsense if you aren't actually paying close attention to decipher it. However, realizing that Rolf is referencing his Nana's inner thighs in basically asking Double D why the long face is just such an obnoxiously hysterical example of how the small, completely random comments like this make these characters shine so bright. It's honestly really cool to recognize that a lot of this is almost what lies at the heart of Cartoon Network. It kind of feels like Nickelodeon was an excellent springboard for shows like Rugrats, Doug, or Hey Arnold that invested in making relatable, true-to-life characters in a sense. Meanwhile, Cartoon Network saw shows like Ed, Edd n Eddy or Johnny Bravo, and they were like, yeah, turn the jokes right up to 11, I don't care how ridiculous the characters are as long as it's funny. With that being said, opening up the stage in a way for the writers to flex comedically kind of resulted in more episodes that had iconic, hilarious moments. I brought up earlier how this cold open was one of the greatest of all time, but on top of that, they crammed in multiple iconic moments into this episode even from that opening. Specifically, I loved Eddie spamming Kevin's doorbell just to tell him that he's not allowed outside, but the true iconic star of this beginning scene was Ed teasing Kevin with the little faces that he drew on his toes. This is one of those gags that just feels so true to Ed as a character, and that makes it land so much more genuine and funny, especially compared to literally any foot joke in any show made by Dan Schneider over on Nickelodeon. Without a doubt, outside of the morbid nature, there's just so much of this episode that makes it such an iconic one among many other iconic episodes of this show. I really have to ask though, what do you guys think? What's your opinion on the way that this show walked the fine line between morbid and hilarious? Let me know in the comments down below. I always love seeing your guys' feedback. Also, again, don't forget to tell me about what Cartoon Network shows you're interested in seeing covered in future videos. I'm always open to suggestions. Of course, I have to give a humongous shout out to my friends in the True 90s Kids tier on both Patreon and YouTube memberships. You guys are some of my favorite people in the world, and it's with high regard that I tell you that I appreciate you more than words could ever say. Thank you so much for everything, my friends. Thanks for your support, and of course, thanks for believing in me. Also, hey, just a heads up, if you want to buy a YouTube membership, my main channel, Dust Till Sean, is the best place to do that. If you enjoyed the video though, be sure to drop a like and give a little praise to the algorithm in hopes that it pushes this one to everybody else. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next one. Peace.